So can I just take a quick poll? You know, we talked last week more than I thought we would about grinders and wheels. I think we've come to the conclusion that we're not going to keep any stone wheels simply because of the potential safety hazard. So now the question is, what grit should we use? I think we're going to have two with 80 and 180, and we're going to have two with 80 and 220. But I wonder what folks here think.
Well, just a second. Monty's brought up a share that's showing us this color thing with shaving cream, which is really quite bizarre.
What is that? Is that a casserole?
That's just that's my shaving cream finish setup.
That's a beautiful thing. How long did you have to cook it?
and that's the effect I got. It's a little light. That was my first attempt. And like I said, you turn everything, the little bowl part last. And that's the bottom. It was sycamore.
You just plop it in that shaving cream?
Yeah. You just drop it down into the shaving cream and kind of twist it around a little bit, pull it out and take a little plastic squeegee and wipe the excess off, clean it with a paper towel.
What color?
And you end up with that type of effect.
Is that dye or acrylic paint? What?
That's dye.
Dye.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And I assume then you shave with the cream afterwards and you get a colorful face.
Yeah.
Or use it as cake icing.
I must ask, what were you smoking when you thought of that? I mean, I would have never thought of dipping a bowl into shaving cream. Mostly because I don't have shaving cream. Maybe Cool Whip.
I'm going to give it back to Ziegler, who was asking a serious question here, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's just a question. 80 grit, 180 grit. Typically on a grinder, but how many folks think maybe 80 and 220 or some other combination?
Personally, I think that you would still need a stone one if you have to reshape a tool in any shape or form. I think you'll be asking a CBN wheel a little bit too much to do that.
Well, I have 80 grit CBN. It does a great job.
You've got an 80
John,
grit,
I honestly think it'd be interesting to have an even finer grit at some point in time to go with the 80 grit. But I mean, if you have, if we're trying to give people a selection of what you can get, I mean, the 80 grit is fixed, but I think a finer, finer than two. I use a 320 on my tool for hone. People call it honing, but I actually use that quite a bit on my CBN wheel because it sharpens beautifully. It doesn't take off very much. And once you've shaped it up, you don't need to take very much off at all before you have a really sharp grind.
I'm with Doug. I'd go for four different wheels, not two. You've got four grinder setups, so get four different wheels twice over. You've got everything you need.
Would you put an 80 on every single one, John?
I consider I have a four-wheel setup and I like it, but I would choose the grits a bit differently, and I'm not really sure. But I'd have the coarsest be an 80 and the finest be what Doug says, around 320, and then whatever I can get in between there is a real useful combo. And a very useful combo. You can shape them, you can hone them, you can do it all. And I have my old grinder, right? And I have my new grinder,
Well, you guys might as well buy a barber strop if you're going to go to 320 or even 220. I mean, why put it on the wheel? Just strap it on the strap.
Because the wheel is much more, because the jigs on the Varigrind thing are way more accurate than I do with a strap. And you can do that as well. But even then, Jim, going to an 80 grit takes off too much steel. I mean, why do you need more than that? If you're down to a 120 to get to your edge back, you've been turning way too long on that tool before you're resharpening it.
Doug is absolutely right. Use the 80 grit when you need to reshape an edge completely, like change the skew angle or work the bevel angle back or make a new tool from a steel blank. Most of the work is done. I sharpen the little scrapers the Boxmaster way upside down on a fine wheel. It doesn't remove hardly any metal. It just raises a little wee burr. And use that same wheel to hone gouges with the
so maybe maybe 2 grinders with an 80 grit wheel, and then, take 2 other grinders starting with maybe either a 120 and 180, and then on the other side have 220 or 360 or something.
Yeah.
80, 150, 80, 150, 240, 300.
Okay.
If you've got all the wheels, it's just good to try them all, to have them available so people can see it. I talked with a company called All Blades Canada, and they sharpen things. And I asked them about sharpening their high-speed steel stuff, like saw blades and stuff. They use 120. They don't go any higher than 120. They said that for cutting tools, the wood doesn't care. 120, you'll get as good a finish. You can spend more time with a finer stone, but they just say 120, 80 for shaping and 120 for sharpening.
You guys need to think about what the accuracy of the Wolverine is. It's going to have enough variability that the 220 is not going to benefit you, in my book. And here, and I'm a shop that does more than just sharpen my chisels. I have an 80 grit stone wheel for that reason. I don't want to take my nuts and bolts and that kind of stuff up on a CBN. I want to take them to a grinding wheel to do that. So I'm trying to get by with 2 wheels.
I'm going to pull the plug. Wait a minute here. I'm going to pull the plug on you here while we open up the hour. We'll come back on this topic in a couple of minutes, though. It's Lancaster Woodturners Weekly Coffee Hour, number 293 for March what is it today, the 6th? I think so.
5th.
March the 5th, 2026. My name's John Kelsey. I'll be your moderator today with my co-host Jim Bowman, who's got the mute key, and John Ziegler, who's the documentarian, produces the notes that go with the shows on YouTube. Okay. The chat was getting pretty hot there about sharpening wheels. I'm going to broaden it a little bit in just a second here. Before we started up here this morning, and I'm seeing 46 on right now, the question was, since the club has now 4 grinding machines, one way or the other, 4 grinders, double-end grinders have shown up. Should some be stone wheels? Should they all be carbide wheels, or CBN wheels? What grit should be on them for sharpening today's range of tools and giving members the broadest experience? A little bit ago it was said that professional sharpening services use 80 to shape edges and 120 to sharpen, and they're done. And that's true. But we're then resharpening that edge, and we don't want to remove steel the way they do, so I use, anyway, that's my argument for a finer wheel. I agree, your edge is sharp at 120, but then if I go back to resharpen it at 120, I'm removing more metal than I need to. And I can more likely maintain that edge on a 220 or even 320 wheel. And I think the finest wheel I have is 240, maybe, I don't know, I'll have to look at it. And I have 4 wheels, and I think I really only need 3 wheels, but one of them has to have a square edge, and they make CBN wheels with a 1-inch square edge, and they also make them with a rounded edge, and the rounded edges are good for sharpening those little bits that people use on hollowing tools. The square edge is really good I find, for skews and parting tools. So I want to have that square edge in the middle of the range, not way down at the very finest, the very dullest. So that's my opinion on it. Let's hear from some more folks, and along with that, I want to mention. No, I'll come to the other topic in a minute. Go ahead.
John, another thing that we were talking about was the grit things. And again, I understand where people say 120 is enough and 180 is enough, but our club is trying to do a variety of tools so that people can use them and see for themselves. So to me, just to restrict every wheel to 120 seems a little bit pointless.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's why I would like to, we're not here to settle what you're going to use, but if you want to try something, that's what the club space is to do. So having those different wheel grits, I think, is for a learning.
So what 4 grits would you have? Or
again, I think the 120, 180, 220, and 320 sort of idea.
I'd like an 80 grit at the bottom end of that.
And I meant an 80 grit has got to be. I meant for the sharpening grits. The 80 grit stands alone as far as doing doing the roughing and shaping. That's all you need. You're absolutely.
I've got a question for you. Does the club have all those for training purposes, or what's the purpose of having so many? Because if you want to do training, it would be nice to have all the same grits or at least similar grits.
They landed on us, is the truth of it. As we
yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, John.
You go ahead.
So there's I think there's two things we're talking about that overlap if you did a Venn diagram. We have the selection of wheels, and then we have the range of sharpening systems. And we're kind of combining the two for a few reasons. First of all, so people can see how the various systems work and they can figure out which ones they might like the best. And then in addition to that, we're looking at what kind of wheels we use. And of course, part of the conundrum there then is
everybody else's status quo.
You might learn which what do you call it? You might learn which system you like. And then you'll learn what wheels you like, although you may not like the wheel that's on the system that you like, and vice versa. But that's part of the experience. And we will have people come in to learn how to sharpen, and we can even do lessons. But frankly, if we want to have a range, we won't be able to have we don't really want every grinder set up with exactly the same system for the purposes of a variety of options.
Huh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, the original
So
question.
they're just for demo purposes. They're not really for instruction or for training purposes. You wouldn't have a class on sharpening there.
Well, yeah.
Well, we might have a class,
Sure
Ken, but we just wouldn't have the ability to have everybody. And we only have 4 grinders, and if we have a class, it'll probably be more than 4 people anyhow. So
they can take turns, watch each other.
they'll take turns, and more likely it's people who are using it at open shop who need to sharpen their tools as they're turning over the course of the open shop, and so they'll have a selection of grinders they can go to. If they have a favorite one, that's fine. If they want to figure out which ones they like, that's also fine.
But to your point about the question of whether it's a class or a grind, the classes, the grit of your wheel does not change the way you use your grinder. I mean, you as far as I'm concerned, the biggest thing about the grinder is the smoothness of if you're going to do something, your motions are smooth, don't push against the wheel, all those other things go in. And it's whether that's on a 120 or 320 grit wheel, all the rules apply the same way. The only difference is the finish you get off your wheel when you're doing it. And that's not, again, I understand what you guys are saying as far as the grid is concerned, but I don't think that having a lower or a finer grit wheel changes how I would teach a grinding class.
Well, and Angelo pointed out, I mean, he likes a finer grit wheel for skews, but his initial thought, just quickly via text, was he thinks a 180 is probably sufficient, but you folks are making a case to have even a finer grit than 220. And we'll have 8 wheels at the end of the day.
You should have you should go for variety. Would be my opinion. I agree. I don't hear, and I think you made a good decision to not have any more white stone wheels, just to go to all CBN.
Well, I'm concerned about safety in the shop to begin with, and I don't know how many people have stone wheels at home, and I know that there may be some advantages to them, but I think for us, I'd rather look at safety first, and then if somebody wants to learn how to sharpen on a stone wheel, even though we don't have one, I think we have enough experts there to tell them generally the procedures and the safety aspects of them.
Sure.
Where and how not to use them, like don't use them on the side.
Yeah, and the trouble is they're usually not round, and making them round is not as straightforward as people imagine.
Right.
Hey, John.
Hey, John.
I have a question there. Do you guys know how to ring a grinding wheel, the stone?
Yeah.
So that you can tell if it's got a micro crack in it without blowing up when you bring it up to speed?
I think I do, but go ahead and tell us.
I don't.
I worked on a grinding shop, and what we do is we have like steel filings, in other words, just a dust, sandal work or anything. And what you do is you just sprinkle it on the top of the wheel when it's sideways. We used to have it hanging on a vertical shaft. And then we just tap it with a wooden hammer just on the bottom, the handle of the hammer. I don't mean to crack it. And the vibration would take all those microparticles and they would highlight and magnify any crack that is in the wheel that you cannot see.
Wow.
And if there is a crack, we hit it with the hammer and break the wheel so that there's no question where the break is. Because a bad wheel is not worth saving. And
you can't
with
save
regards, with regards to the grit, the stone 80 grit wheel, as they wear down, eventually replace them. But they're great for profiling. The tool, the person that brings in Grandpa's tool chest and asks you, can you make these work? It's nice to have an 80 grit to get that profiled. But I go all the way up to 600.
I'm sorry, Don. I accidentally muted you.
You have to unmute yourself, Don. We can't do it. Okay, he's back.
I went from 80 to 600, and I had a 220 in the center, which I used, and I found that by going to 600, it stopped me from having to hone it, because now I power hone. And unless I get a chip, I find all I ever use is the 600. Because originally when I started, I was grinding down 1.5 inches of a chisel in 1 year.
Yeah.
And it gets very costly. Whereas the finer the grit, I'm just honing the stone, and in 2 years I haven't gone 1/4 inch.
And you're honing a lot more often too, aren't you?
3 times on every bowl.
Yeah, I find that too. The sharper the edges and the finer a stone I'm using, less material I'm removing, the more easier it is to keep it as sharp as I can, and it works better.
So not
But
to
I also use a slipstone.
So not to overly belabor this, so clearly we haven't the luxury, for lack of a better word, of having being able to have 8 stones. Most people have 2. If you only have 2, would you go for an 80 and a 180, or 80 and a 220, or some other combination?
I'd go 80, 180.
That's what I have, but some people want more, you know.
Well, then I'd have 4 wheels. I'd have a wider range. But if I only had to have only 2 wheels, that's what I'd do.
I'm guessing the difference between 180 and 220 would not be noticeable by most people.
I agree.
Gotcha.
I agree.
And I started out, and I still have it with the Sorby Pro Edge, which I also like. It'll give you a flat grind, and even though I can grind on the side of the 180, I go to the Pro Edge, quite frankly, on lots of things.
A lot of people like that.
John?
The other thing that people, sorry, go ahead.
This is John. I should have said it at the meeting, but I have a Pro Edge, and if you wanted to show and demonstrate to people the variety of sharpening systems, I think, instead of spending so much money on all those CBN wheels, is to get a Pro Edge as a totally nice alternative.
It's a very good system, that's for sure.
The other systems.
That's so. What's funny here? I'm going to call Doug out. The other day, I think it was at Open Shop. Barry said, "Oh, I happen to have a Pro Edge. I'm going to sell. Anybody want it? Maybe I'll sell it to the club." And Doug goes, "I'll take it." So there goes a Pro Edge.
Well, that Pro Edge came from one of the estates that the club liquidated, actually.
Did it really?
One of the other things that we're not mentioning is that we're talking about sharpening chisel, skews and gouges, but I also use my 80 grit for my scraper because it gives a really a much bigger burr than the finer grit thing. So whenever again, the use of a coarse grit for your scrapers gives you a better burr and it lasts a bit longer.
That's if you want a coarse burr like that, yeah.
Yeah, I need to have a question for Doug. So I hear you guys talking a lot about like 320 grit being super fine in CBN. And on the Tormek, we use 1200 grit diamond for superfine. Why is there such a variance between CBN and diamond?
I've been investigating that. I think it's a matter of how you the grit you use, because I know you can get finer grit on CBN. It's just a matter of whether you do it. But to be honest, I haven't looked into that in detail, and you've given me something to think about. I do know that the grits are based on mesh size, which is how many meshes per square inch you can get. And going from 320 to the next level up was always considered in mining engineering that it's actually exponential, and it's the next grit up as far as fineness is concerned. So 320 is sort of half the grit of 240 or whatever, if you want to call it, from my engineering days. But I have, other than how fine you can make the diamond, I think the CBN. With diamond, you're just using the dust off of anything you get when you're mining it. I don't think you mine cubic boron nitride. I think it's artificially made, so I'm not sure how fine it actually goes. I'll look into that question and get back to you.
I have flat stones from flat woodworking days, and we used to use oil stones and Arkansas stones, and they were very, very fine. And then we used Japanese water stones, and then ended up with diamond stones. And the diamond plates were either steel plates with diamond dust on them, and I have them in 300, 600, and 1200, and that's for plane irons and chisels. And that was pretty standard in shops working hardwood, trying to make good furniture.
But plane irons and chisels are usually carbon steel, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you look at shop grinders, like the ones that are used in a lot of machine shops, they typically would have 360, 600, and 1200 as the three grits for the diamond plates that you would use. I know I'm trying to advocate. I just was a question. Why does it seem that the grit's so much different? I mean, it's not like 1200 versus 1000, right? It's 1200 versus 300.
And I have a diamond hone that's a 600 grit diamond hone that I got from Alan Lacer, who's kind of a specialist in this and a real advocate of the honed edge, especially on skews. And that's what he considers the very fine grit. And it is fine, and it works really well for touching up any edge. So.
I think one of the things people don't realize is that, the vast majority of diamonds mined for mining are actually going into drill bits and grinding things, so that, you got a huge variety. The big diamonds are just a small portion of what comes out of the ground. So it's a natural process, and breaking up diamond isn't exactly easy. Otherwise, it would be done more.
Yeah.
So again,
enough on this?
I suspect there's a economic reason for the grit size.
Well, it's an interesting subject, and clearly we've got a variety of experiences and views on it, and somebody will probably come up with expertise. In fact, Belcher might have there. Belcher, are you calling in with expertise on this?
Well, actually, I have a question. I actually was helping a turner close down his shop this week, and as I sorted through his stuff, I ended up with a bucket full of what I would label. I didn't recognize the names, if they had any names on the tools. And what I don't want to do is take some poor quality metal and ruin a CBN wheel. And I would be very appreciative of any rules beyond the skate rule with a mill file that would help me decide whether the tool should be kept and sharpened or thrown away.
A whole other topic. Anybody want to talk to that?
So, Dennis, my question is, why would you not sharpen some metals on CBN?
Because if it's a carbon steel, it clogs up the CBN wheel and ruins it.
I've heard that over the years, but I haven't seen any evidence from researchers that it actually does.
I'm with Rich on that.
I think that concern was overstated when everybody started buying CBN wheels. Yeah. The issue is it a tool steel? Now, certainly, I think if you did nothing but carbon tool steel, maybe there's a possibility. But if you're just talking about mixing it in, some high-speed steel, some carbon tool steel, we're not talking about bolts here. I don't think it's a real concern. One of the things that Woodturners wonders demonstrated was how you can clean a CBN wheel and how you can prevent clogging with a special wax that they had where you coat it and it reduces the chance. They even showed sticking a copper pipe in a CBN wheel and then cleaning it up.
Well, my concern is that when you get grandpa's tools, they keep getting passed on and on and on. And I don't really want to be in a situation where I'm having a bucket of tools and I don't know what the quality of the metal is. And if someone out there has any rules of thumb that I could use to determine what the quality is, I would appreciate hearing them.
You can determine it by taking and comparing the sparks off of carbon tool steel versus high-speed steel. And if you just take one of each and try it on a wheel, Dennis, it'll be obvious to you what the spark difference looks like, and you can readily determine.
Friable wheel or a CBN wheel?
I think on a friable wheel first.
Any kind of wheel. I think it's still going to generate sparks.
So
you'll get more sparks on a stone wheel.
The other thing I would argue is there are certain of those old carbon steel tools that I have, and they grind super sharp. So there are a lot of times where they're actually more useful than the high-speed steel.
They take a sharper.
If you're doing a soft wood.
That's
so
right.
Maybe something people want.
Carbon steel takes a sharper edge and doesn't hold it as long as high-speed steel. That's just the way it is.
There's no carbon tools made out of carbide.
Right.
I might add that neither are high-speed steels, but we'll just add that as a separate thing. But another thing, just for you folks, I worked in a steel mill when I was in college, and they actually had guys with grinding wheels going around to check the alloys because they just literally would take the grind and then they would look at the spark pattern coming off, the color, everything like that, and they could differentiate all the steel alloys just by the pattern. But that took a lot of skill.
Well, and experience, looking
exactly.
from known samples,
Exactly.
So what I'm hearing is maybe the quality of the steel doesn't really make a difference, but that bothers me. I see China on some of these tools.
I think it does make a difference, but I think you can find out pretty easily if once you establish what the spark patterns look like, which you can do by experimenting yourself with known steel.
What I'm really concerned about, I don't want to go to a new turner who ends up with free tools or cheap tools, and he has bad experiences. So as I talk through this with you all, I think I'm probably better off to err on the side of throwing questionable tools away so they don't end up in the hands of a beginner who doesn't know any better and gets frustrated because they have to be sharpened every 4 minutes.
That's probably a good rule of thumb.
Well, Dennis, I think you have to temper that, though, with someone that shows up with those old tools. They're just getting started, and you come in there with a very strong position that, these are no good, and that you need to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars of replacing all these with high-speed steel, and I don't even want to bother to sharpen them. And I think you got to be careful of coming across that way.
Yeah, that's not where I'm at. I have the tools. I closed down the gun shop. I did the sorting, and I got a whole bucket of what I consider to be questionable tools. So, I'm not espousing this because the sense I'm receiving from everybody, this isn't a black and white issue. Right. And back to that grit question that Doug was talking about, I'm not so sure that the standards, we still have a number, 1,000, right? But I think it can mean different things on a CBN wheel versus a diamond stone. There may just be different scales involved, which is part of the confusion while the numbers don't agree.
Dennis, my take on what you're doing there is, firstly, I think if you're going to sell them or provide them to someone, they need to have a grinding system at their house because they can't just take them and get them sharpened and use them for a month, right? So that would be a caveat. It needs to be clear to whoever buys them. But yeah, and certainly you would advise a new person to steer away from them. But there are times when I really like having those high carbon steels.
The other thing,
what are those situations specifically?
Especially if I'm doing finishing cuts like a walnut or really soft woods. Okay. They work extremely well.
I'm sorry, Rick. I lost who was speaking.
No, if I'm using it on softer woods like walnut, it works extremely well.
The other part that you didn't that's been sort of not mentioned is that the different materials have different shapes as far as the microstructures of them. So, for example, silicon carbide is a very much sharper material than aluminum oxide. So if and so that's another thing that you think, the faceted of the structure. So again, you get a 320 silicon carbide versus a 320 aluminum oxide wheel, they will grind completely differently.
Yes.
And the silicon carbide is way more aggressive than this aluminum oxide in the same grit level.
And back to to Dennis and Rich's point, if I wouldn't use the tool, I'm not going to give it to anybody else and imagine they're going to use it. So that, if you're looking for a rule of thumb on which ones to keep and which ones to junk, if you wouldn't use it, don't expect anybody else to.
I think that's a good practical situation or answer for a situation I'm in specifically.
And then back to Rich's point, the other place that I use an old carbon steel gouge is if I've got a log with bark on it on the lathe and I'm getting off the bark. I don't want to screw up my good high expensive steel edges on that stuff. Lots of grit and bark. So I'm going to use an old carbon steel gouge from the bucket that I've got at the Teat flea market and whale away until I've gotten rid of the rough bark.
And you may find a nail or a fence wire or something else, right?
Every other damn thing. You got it.
Yeah. Well, high-speed steel cut the nail. That's not an issue.
Sorry. I'd like to argue in favor of carbon steel tools as well. They are far easier to sharpen for a beginner because it's easier to change their shape. And if you're experimenting at the beginning with different shapes of tools or tool tips, then it's easier to change them with carbon tools. And I would just sharpen them, use them, see what they do, and if you think they are no good, then put them away. But I still have a few carbon steel tools which I love using, especially on softer woods, and they are really nice. So it might not be bad for a beginner to try out carbon steel tools, especially if he or she learns sharpening and wants to change sharpening angles and stuff like that.
So I think that's a great point. And Dennis, those tools could be used for sharpening classes. And if somebody messes them up, it's not like it costs anything.
Well, I don't. That doesn't work with the CBN wheels. You're removing so little metal that even in a beginner sharpening class with CBN wheels, I'm not concerned about how much steel gets used. But I'd like to ask the group: has anybody out there ever thrown away a tool?
No. One of the things that you got to consider when you're talking high-speed steel and carbon steel, if you're sharpening carbon steel, typically the old guys would do it by hand on a stone, fairly slow, maybe a little moisture or lubrication, and they get a really, really fine hone edge. You take that same carbon steel and within 2 seconds it changes color on a grinding stone. You've just lost a temper. That tool's useless.
Okay, so there's one of the rules I'm looking for. If I take one of those tools out of the bucket, take my white wheel, and I put it on there and I start to see it blue, get rid of it.
Well, if you start to see it blue, you put it on there too hard. So the thing is with high carbon steel, you don't want it to get hot. You want to sharpen it, but you don't want to get it hot. If it changes color, you've lost a temper. And then you can re-temper it, but that's a whole different ball of wax. Anybody that works with metal knows you can anneal steel and you can re-harden it. But the average new wood turner, if he puts his carbon steel tool on a grinder and it changes color, he's already lost his edge.
Well, and the water you have near a grinder is not to cool the steel after you've burned it. It's to keep it cool before you burn it.
And I might add that if you're getting it too hot, that means you're pushing too hard. You're not letting the grinder grind. You're trying to force it to grind, and that will gum up everything and will make a whole mess of the whole procedure.
So let me make sure I understand. Dennis, you're saying you should never sharpen a carbon steel tool on a CBN wheel?
Nobody's saying that.
No, I've seen Ken's videos about cleaning it up with brake fluid, but I mean, so you got an hour and a half of cleaning up a wheel that you could just avoid now by not putting lower quality steel on a CBN wheel. Now, having said that, if I got to reshape somebody's tools, well, I've kept the old grinder and I kept the old white wheel, and I go back there and freehand it till I kind of halfway get it where I want it to be. Then I bring it up to the CBN wheels and finish it off there. That's kind of my resolution.
No, I was actually asking the other question, not having carbon steel mess up the CBN wheel. It seemed like you were saying the CBN wheel could ruin the temper of a carbon steel.
It can. If you overheat the metal, you will.
Anything that overheats the metal will ruin the temper. It's not the grind that matters. It's the temperature that matters.
Right, but in a second, somebody said that you could screw up the carbon steel, whereas the stone might not. Is that true?
No.
Okay. Then I misunderstood.
You can do them both equally quickly on a carbon steel, CBN, or whatever. It's a matter of pressure, how hard you press, and the rate of stone removal. So I think it's easier if you have a really coarse wheel, you're removing a lot of steel very quickly. It's going to get hotter. It's a matter of work, guys. Heat is work. If you work it hard, it'll So it's hard. It is more difficult to get a hot grind on a very fine stone because there's not a lot of heat going into the steel surface to clean it off.
And to follow along with what Doug's saying, if you press hard on a wheel that's got grit on it like a CBN or a diamond, really what you're going to do mostly is dislodge those grinding particles more than anything. So you're going to make the wheel not as useful over time. You need to just let the diamonds or the grit do its job and then move away.
Yeah, I'm getting stunned. I never push. It's always a matter of just resting the tool on the wheel. And this push is just alien to me. That just blows me away that people would actually push a tool into a grinding wheel.
But what you're talking about is beginners again. What I find is that experienced people like yourself, Dennis, don't push. But beginners often think, well, I need to grind faster, so I'm going to push harder. And so that's the tendency, is to lean into it. So when you're exactly right. You don't push, you let the wheel do the work.
Okay, have we worked this one hard enough for now?
Just one question.
Yes. Sure.
Where do you buy your CBN wheels?
There's an outfit here that specializes in them, and the tools dealers all have them as well. But what is it, Woodturners Wonders, who specializes in them?
Yeah. Well, they're the ones that brought out the low cost one. But since then, I've seen on Amazon there's a couple of other brands that I suspect come out of the same or similar plants out of China that appear to be the same type of equivalent wheels at sometimes a dollar or two cheaper.
Yeah, hey,
well,
Don,
I've got two over here, and they've cost me £29, and I've had them for 2.5 years, and they're still good.
But yeah, you use the plural. Where do you buy your wheels? I mean, I've had wheels now for 10 years, and there's no need to replace them.
No, but these I've had from. It's a company called Temu.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Temu is like Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a point, because if you're only going to use them once a month for showing people, it might suffice to buy those rather than even more expensive ones.
He's got a point.
I have a quick question, John.
Yes.
Do CBN wheels ever need replacing? And if they do, how do you know when it's time to replace it?
Well, we had one fella come along with the grit kind of peeling off as if it had been painted on. I think he had bought a cheap wheel. I'm not sure. And they can get clogged. And as somebody noted earlier, there is a product, a stick, that's supposed to prevent clogging and clean the wheel. And I have one, and I haven't dared to use it, but I think I probably will. I haven't dared to use it for fear of mucking up my wheels.
You won't like it.
You're probably right.
I did not like it. because it just smears up the wheel in my book.
That was kind of my thought too. It's like, well, I don't think this makes sense.
Back to Sherry's question, though, I bought a CBN wheel back when I was still living in Calgary. That was probably 15 years ago, and it's still like the day I bought it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, 10 years plus, and it still sharpens beautifully. So
none of us is using a wheel hard enough to wear it out, mostly.
The hardness of CBN is about 10 times the hardness of steel, of tool steel. So it's very hard to wear that down. It's like diamonds.
Isn't it really the binder where the point of failure is, Doug, rather than the seat?
It's the
yeah, exactly. But that's also where the point of everything gumming up is as well, Dennis. If you're going to gum up the steel, it's not going to be removing the grit. It's going to be steel sticking to the actual surface that's not there, so that's not covered. So anyway, and filling in the gaps.
I think the best judgment there is if it's taking too long to sharpen things. And I know it's going to so slowly get there and you may not really notice it. But if you take that tool to another shop and they have a new wheel and you see that it's dramatically faster, then it's probably time to replace it.
That's a pretty good guideline.
And you can also clean them. There's a PBS blaster or something. There's a solvent you can spray on it to clean the grit out. And that I think a CBN wheel will benefit from a occasional cleaning, maybe putting that solvent on there and scrubbing on it with an old toothbrush or something.
Hey, Mike, I've heard, maybe it's wife's tale, but using brake cleaner to clean them, have you tried that?
No, I just use that PB blaster from Home Depot because that's what Ken Rizza recommended. He did a little video on it, on cleaning the wheel, so that's what I use. It was cheap and easy to find.
What is it again?
It's called PB Blaster, I think. It's a spray can of a solvent spray cleaner, and they sell it probably at auto stores, but Lowe's and Home Depot carry it.
All right.
Smells nasty. The fumes are probably bad.
And Jeff Hankinson says he uses a white eraser to clean out and declog the wheels. That also makes sense.
I use a hard white foam that comes in a packing foam. Every now and then you'll run across it in something you buy, but it's a foam, but it's very, very dense, and I use that to clean the surface after I use that stuff.
Huh. Okay, I think
will a rubber bar work on a CBN wheel?
No, I just chew that rubber up. You need something finer and denser.
Got it.
Yeah. I think we've beaten it up as far as we're going to go. I was going to add some other tool topic today, but I'm going to save it for another day. Let's look at some wood turning. I see Mike Brazeau, I know, has a slideshow he wants to give us, and Vasko has his hand up. So let's start with Mike Brazeau because he made me pre-warned.
Thanks, John. I'll do a share here. I've had a couple of bowls on the go since early in the year. This one I showed to you a few weeks ago, and I was inquiring about how I should apply the finish to it. Anyway, about the end of January, I got a note from my sister-in-law, my wife's sister, Lori, and she's a kind of a bit of a designer. And she says, would she say, I have a design preoccupation with trying to find a piece of burled wood to put on my shelf. She has a couple of shelves in her living room area on the wall, and a couple of my pieces are on them. So I want to first start the story about this little holder that I fashioned. Okay, I'm gonna guess this.
There you got it. I see it.
Yeah. So around 2000, I started gathering wood turning information. There weren't many pictures on the internet in those days. There was the discussion groups, but there was a fellow in Ottawa. This I found in my resource. Now it's about 4 gig and 84 folders of wood turning segmented on my PC. And Bill Nedow was a very accomplished turner in Ottawa, very well respected. And he had posted this stand for a platter on the WOW site in 2003. He bought these balls from Lee Valley and used some dowel, and then just had it on a stick. So I thought the idea looked good. So I started trying to figure out how to do it, and figured something maybe an inch in diameter. Anyway, so I mounted this up on the lathe, and then I found I had difficulty trying to fit the 2 feet into a small area here. The dowels were 3/8 of an inch. So first thought was, well, maybe I can change the design, but I wanted this to be turned. So this would have been a stick with a vertical piece and the feet coming out. You needed about a 3-inch distance between them. So then I woke up one morning and God said to me, well, stupid, just make the support bigger at the base. So I started playing with the diameters and figuring out this would be about 3 inches. This was close to a life size and something simple. So I grabbed a piece of cherry and put it on the lathe, turned it, and started playing around with the holes, etc. About 20 years ago, I made this drilling jig using bushings from Lee Valley. And I was making a Christmas ornament at the time, and I was putting Swarovski crystals around the ornament in 2 or 3 places on the finials and on the upper portion of the ornament. So these are available from Lee Valley. They're hardened steel. They come in a variety of diameters. You put this piece in the holder, and then these screw into it. It was not expensive. It's worked out really well. Here's just a shot of me lining it up. This was a piece of 3/8 inch drill rod. This was my first batch of holes, which hadn't worked out. So I just moved along, and this is John, your small steel ruler you mentioned the other night, is a great finder for 90 degrees. One of the things I find on my 2436 is trying to figure out what index position you're on without some kind of an indicator is really brutal. So I just take a piece of copper wire, it could be a paper clip, tape it on, and have it just hanging down over the index wheel. Works great. So I had turned the feet. I just used some 5/8 dowel mounted in number 2 jaws, the pin. Some people call them pin jaws. I heard that the other night. Haven't heard that term. And I was just had some 3/8 dowel, just trying to see what looked good. I think this was what I came close to deciding on. This was just wanted to show the evolution. This was the final result. So this was 2-inch diameter cherry. It's about 1 inch here, and another piece of 3/8 inch dowel. I just sort of kept playing with it in my hands, figuring out the dimensions. There was no set rules, and that's pretty much it on the holder. It worked out really well. I really liked this concept. I've never really liked the idea of these dollar store plate holders that you can buy, holding up a very accomplished turning. You know, it just anyway. I've never had the need of one very often, but
that's a good design. That's a good design anybody could make for that situation.
Yeah, it's working out really well. And,
that could also be a ball with a flattened end on it, you know, so it sat, you know.
Yeah. The one thing that was important is these are just about 5/8 in diameter, the ends, which the original diameter of the dowel. I had to make sure that my distance to the base was so that these would rest on the shelf surface. So that was a little bit tricky. But it wasn't that hard. It was just a fun thing. I didn't rush it. It was just something to get me out of YouTube news and stuff like that these days.
Okay, now the bowl.
So this is the bowl blank that I started with. When Laurie said the burl, I started looking around, and I suddenly realized, I think I have a piece. And I'm not sure where I got it. It was through the guild somehow. This was the first core out of a bowl, of a burl. these 4 screw holes were quite deep. The whole thing was about 2 inches thick, and these went down about 1.25 inches. So I didn't take a picture when I first mounted it. I basically put the convex surface into a small vacuum chuck and pushed it on with the tail center, and then turned this dado, I call it a dado. So I formed a tenon, and then I could mount it and work on the back. We had some discussion a couple of weeks ago. Someone was inquiring about how can I attach a tenon to an existing piece, and we talked about it a bit. I decided to use a Forstner, and unfortunately, Forstners have a point. So I ended up with this rather deep hole. That was about a 2-inch Forstner. I really only made this hole about 1/16 of an inch deep. I just wanted to center perfectly the tenon that I put on it. So I turned a tenon in hard maple, and I have other pictures, but I didn't put them in just to be expedient here. And I like to use epoxy in a situation like this. I know Lyle Jameson has used thick CA, etc. I don't have any thick CA around. I do have epoxy, and I let it cure for a couple of days. So then I could turn my chuck fitting, and it was very secure. I didn't include any of the turning pictures. It wasn't that difficult to turn. I ended up using a large high carbon steel scraper that I made another 20 years ago, quite often in the bottom. Because of the burl, I had tremendous problems pulling a vacuum. I was really only drawing about 10 inches of vacuum. And so I tried masking tape. That wasn't enough. Went to duct tape. I had duct tape on the inside, the outside. I kept adding more duct tape patches. And in the early stages, I kept the tailstock up pretty close here just in case. But at 10 inches, I'm not feeling that secure. I'm more worried about power failures. In the end, I took some fiberglass strapping tape, and I had done this once before on a large piece, and that worked out. It just gives you that little bit of security. Just put some around here, 4 pieces, and then wrap it around. This is an ABS plumbing union fitting. The polishing, I didn't really come away from when I posed that question that day. I know it's about 3 meetings ago with much. And so I posted it on the AAW forum, which is my go-to. If you want good advice, there's lots of, just like on our coffee hour, lots of good turners that frequent there. And a fellow from Ottawa actually he said, rather than using the white applicator that Osmo will give you, or not give you, you buy, I'd make a wad or use a cloth. So I decided, just took some t-shirt cloth and wrapped it up in a wad with an elastic and put it on very, very thin. I was worried about these holes filling with the oil because it's a little bit more viscous than Danish oil or the other oils that I'm accustomed to using. In the end, it didn't turn out to be a problem. The second coat I put on with the white applicator, and then if I needed to, I could wipe it out of any of the holes because they end up with a different gloss effect, you know. This is the final edition. I was really tempted to use Toby's dyes. This to me looked like water. I thought, ooh, this would be cool to put some blue here, but I didn't have the guts to do it. It's about 9 inches, I think it might be 9.5 in diameter. So I think it'll sit very well on Lori's shelf. Here's the back. I use a bent wire pyrography of the home-built power supply. Been doing that for years.
Lovely bowl, Mike. That's a really nice piece. Beautiful bowl. Yeah. Beautiful piece of wood.
It's a simple. I couldn't do much with it because I have the constraints. I don't have much depth to work with. But
you don't want to do much to it. The wood itself is the show.
Exactly. No, I'm happy with it. And I'm very happy with the Osmo. I do want to rub this. The touch isn't perfect. I don't want to buff it with diamond because it'll get in here. I might just do a dry buff or even just rub it with some denim. You know?
Yeah. How many Osmo did you put on it?
I just put 2. I was going to do more.
Do more.
You think it'd be worth doing?
Yeah, it'll get you at 3. It suddenly gets a more of a sheen that you might like. I mean, try it on a sample, but the third difference between 2 and 3 is often quite visible.
Yeah, I can still do that. You know,
you can do it by hand. You don't have to go back on the lathe.
No, there's no problem putting it on once it's cured.
Yeah, just wipe on, wipe off.
But you know, the thing that I found working in this area, on the inside especially, is the stuff sets up so quickly.
Really?
Like they say 10 minutes. It's nowhere near 10 minutes. If you rub it after 10 minutes, it's dry practically.
You must be in very dry interior conditions.
That's in my shop, so it's probably 60% humidity.
Yeah, I don't know then. I don't.
And anyway, I just find that it sets up very quickly compared to other oils. But I'm very delighted with the final result. This is gloss, so one more coat will give it more gloss, I think. Definitely.
Yes, if you want more gloss, which you might on that to get that water effect to really shimmer at you.
Yeah. So
hey, Mike,
the other
when
bowl
you
I
were
was
designing
working on,
that stand, did you come up with any guidelines on how long the legs need to be versus the depth of the bowl, or how high?
You know what? I did not. I just basically played with it in my hands on my table saw. My table saw is my work surface, and I just played with the holding it and looking at it and seeing what would work. Number one was the spacing between the knobs, and then the distance, and
it looked to be about the same as the plastic ones you'd buy, though. They sort of had about that same span and that same angle, if I recollect.
Yeah, it's not much different. But that's sort of how I did it. And when I first cut them off, I made them long so that I could make them shorter, but I couldn't make them longer. And
you'd always make another. It's a real simple piece.
Oh yeah. They were kind of easy to turn. I did stabilize them with the tailstock, and then the final shaping of the ball was really done with sandpaper.
Yeah,
because it's difficult when you're out 4 inches. And the wood one of them I did, and the wood moved. It moved, and just when you release the tension in the dowel, the stuff moved about easily a 1/16 of an inch.
But you can just, if you're using a pin chuck, a small jaw chuck, you can just move it into the chuck until all you've got sticking out is the ball.
Yeah, I left the mounting port, like I left the original diameter in the chuck. So. Yeah, you could.
Different ways of working on that.
But it's a I was really pleased with the outcome on it. And you could do other things with that little piece, like you say. It could be a half a ball.
There's also some notes in the chat about plans available for similar stands from other turning clubs. And I saw some of that go by, as well as a discussion about whether you can or cannot burn steel. Which I'm going to weigh on right here because I can't type while I'm paying attention to other people. I think you can draw the temper out of very thin steel at the very edge of your tool, which is the problem. You can't. You're quite right. You can't with a grinder detemper the whole bar, but you can sure screw up the very last micron of the edge.
Yeah, I just want to quickly run through these. This was a piece I roughed out in 2012. Our niece lives a couple of kilometers away, and she had a walnut tree taken down. So I don't even remember, it looks like it was a limb crotch. It has some beautiful figure. It's really hard to capture. But quite pleased with the way it came out. That's Osmo as well. That picture, I had lost my light through the windows in the shop, so it's a little dull.
Really good job of keeping the bark on.
Yeah, I've lost a few pieces, but I didn't worry about it. I don't remember what time of year the tree was cut, etc. But like walnut, that bark's quite high. It's quite thick. Yeah. Anyway, I'll stop that, and I've taken enough here.
Okay.
Hey, John, we just have a new guest joined us all the way from Australia, but he's based in the country right now. Stret, I hope I said your last name correctly.
Where is he? Can you highlight him? I can't see him.
Yeah, I hide him here. Hang on. Sorry, John.
Okay, I'm going to go to Vasko, who's been
go
very
ahead.
patiently hanging by. Ken.
Yeah, hi. I love to watch the YouTube videos. And what's going on? Unmute my.
You're spotlit.
Okay, here we go. I love watching YouTube videos. And of course, Mike Peace is one of my favorites, but so is Richard Raffan. And as Mike knows, I like to make comments. If you read anything I've seen, I usually put a comment on. So Richard Raffan the other day made some scoops, and I wrote a comment that said, there's only one thing better than watching Richard Raffan make a scoop. That's me making a scoop and then using it. So I thought that was just kind of clever. Well, because I had bought a bowl from a Richard before, so he had my email. So he immediately emailed me, and he goes, "I want to see it. show me." So he was calling me out. So I quickly ran down into the basement, and I made my scoop. And I've made scoops before, so I kind of knew where I was going with it. So I made my first scoop. And when I looked at it, I went, it's a little short. But I sent him a picture real quick. And I got a lot of comments back on how I could improve them, make them longer, make them deeper, do this to handle, blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, I'm going to keep going until I find one that he likes. So I ended up making 5 more scoops. And this is all out of a piece of apple branch that I had. It's been sitting around for about 5 years. No splits in it, believe it or not. So I don't know if you all know, but I was really concerned about getting this consistent. To me, that's really important. I think to a lot of people it is. And I couldn't figure out quite how to do it. So what I did is I went back to the bowl turning. And I said, well, the first thing you do with a bowl, you like to put a drill bit in. So I put a drill bit in to establish my depth. And you can see the difference in the depth between these two. So I did that. Then I started taking out the edges, with the scraper. And then I'm going, well, how do I assure that this wall thickness stays the same? Because I have a hard time with my fingers sometimes judging the thickness. So again, I went back to the bowl and I pulled out my handy dandy calipers and I ran it along, and lo and behold, I was able to get all the way down to the bottom. So that really helped me get the consistent shape, this consistent thickness of the walls. Before I was doing it by hand and it wasn't quite coming out so well. But then, so I took a picture of them, all 6 of them, and I sent them back to Richard and said, here you go, these are the ones I made. And he replied and he says, well, I like this handle, but I don't like this handle. So you can see the difference in the shape. It has a little bit of, a little bit more character to it. So now I've got to figure out if I can return these handles somehow. I don't know, but that's what I'm going to try to do, return those handles. But I think I'm just going to make 6 more.
Just make another scoop.
Yep, just keep making other scoops. So he was very helpful. He was very critical, and I appreciated that, actually. It gave me good information.
Well, that sounds like a terrific exercise, and I agree with you. The scoop making can be a challenge. I've never made a successful scoop. I've tried a few times and run into the very things you're talking about.
It's more difficult than you think, especially getting I have a hard time getting the inside smooth. For some reason, I just doesn't happen. Maybe it's this apple, because there's a lot of grain in there. It's a transition between the good and the bad. I don't know if you can see that.
I know apple. Apple's nice turning wood once you get it right. It turns good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually when I can't get it right in there, it's not the wood, it's me.
But I really thought that was kind of a revelation using the dividers. I'm like, oh, well, I could just do the same thing I do for bowls.
Very, very good tip. And I'm going to thank you all for participation in this hour. Chiliki, and I'm sorry I'm going to save you for next week. Is that okay with you? John, you're muted.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. We'll
Yes.
we'll have you at the top of the list next week. And we'll see you all next week for another rousing hour of chit-chat about wood turning. For
I may
those-
be late because your clocks go forwards 3 weeks before ours.
Yeah, we go forward this weekend coming up.
Yeah, I think Kai and me will be coming on a bit late.
Well, we hope to see
Yeah,
you.
thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, right. I'll try and make a point of it in the invite as well, just as an in case. I don't know how it happens around the world anymore. So,
Nice.
Thank you, John.
thanks everyone.
Take care.
Thank you, John.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Talk soon, Bert. Cheers, Mike.
Yeah, see you, John.
Wood shop. Thank God for wood.